Hello, good afternoon. I'm very excited to be moderating this conversation today with experts from the IDB Climate Change Division, from IDB Invest, our private sector arm, and from our corporate sustainability program. My name is Angela Funes, and I'm a lead communications specialist at the IDB. I'm very happy to be here with you all. So as many of you know, we had Earth Day last Friday, which we do every year on April 22nd. And we do recognize the importance of this day. And we want to take this opportunity to share what the IDB Group is doing to build a resilient future in the face of so many challenges, and the importance of investing in our planet by investing in our region, Latin America, and the Caribbean. And talking about investing, last year, IDB financed a record of $4.5 billion in activities related to climate change, which is about 30% of our total approvals. Also, last year during COP26, we announced our commitment to align all operations with the Paris Agreement starting in 2023, which is next year. So today, I'm very excited because we have three great speakers who will talk about IDB's unique and integrated approach to sustainability and to climate smart recovery. This approach includes governance, strategies, policies, projects, but also innovative financial tools. So let's start. So let me welcome our first speaker, Daniel Incapien. Daniel is a lead operations specialist at the recently created Amazon unit of IDB. This unit was created actually last year during our annual meeting. So we're very excited to have Daniel here in this event. Daniel leads funding solutions for the Amazon initiative. So welcome, Daniel. And then our second speaker is Ilen Meirovich. Ilen is the head of the climate change at IDB Invest, where she leads a team that promotes smart solutions for sustainable business. What does this mean, right? It's they really support companies to implement mitigation and adaptation strategy. And last but not least, Brett Copeland is the division chief of administrative service in our budget department. This department is responsible for the functioning of the everyday services at the IDB Group employees use. We're talking about our services in headquarters here in Washington, D.C., and also in our country office. So welcome all, great to have you here. So before we start, I don't want to forget, please send your questions. We want to be this a very interactive conversation, and we will answer them at the end of the panel. So Daniel, are you ready? Let's start with you. All right. So Daniel, tell us in a nutshell, what is the Amazon initiative about? What are the kind of resources and solutions that you're seeking to provide?
Thank you so much, Angela. And well, the Amazon is home to more than 34 million people and 10% of the world's known biodiversity. Amazon also accounts for 20% of the world's remaining forest areas. However, continued deforestation and ecosystem degradation pose major economic, environmental, and cultural threats to the region and to the planet. So in tune with our Vision 2025 agenda of advancing climate action and COP26 call to strengthen the role of indigenous peoples as stewards for nature, the Amazon initiative mobilizes public and private resources to forge and apply sustainable and inclusive development models based on the human capital, the natural wealth, and the cultural heritage of the Amazon region in a way that benefits its diverse communities. It also offers IDB Group clients with financial resources and technical assistance from the IDB to accelerate compliance with sustainable development goals in the communities and the territories of the Amazon region. And just like the biome is comprised by more than 8 countries, the Amazon Initiative's work area is not contained to a single country. It encompasses the entire Amazon biome with a focus on the lowlands of the Amazon basin, which is covered predominantly by dense, humid tropical forests. The initiative initially will have 4 thematic areas and 3 transversal areas. Those thematic areas are bioeconomy, human capital, and social services, including health, which is very important in the context of the Amazon region, as we just unfortunately saw in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Sustainable forest management and sustainable infrastructure and cities, as we do want to have a conversation with Amazonian cities about what does it mean to be a city in the Amazon region? What does it be, and how can we create sustainable urban development models that are consistent and that are protected to the natural wealth that surrounds these territories? In addition to those 4 thematic areas, we have 3 transversal areas that are across every single intervention: gender inclusion and diversity, institutional capacity, and rule of law, and finally, forest conservation, as we want to work towards and prevent intervening in a way that brings the Amazon closer to the tipping point.
Thank you. That's very interesting work. It's very exciting. And I think the most important thing that you mentioned is that those development models are based on human capital, natural wealth, and that cultural heritage. I think this is very important for the local communities in the Amazon, and I hope some of the people in those countries are tuning in. And I was going to ask you, of those 8 countries, which are these 8 countries, so everybody knows what we're talking about, the reach of this initiative?
It basically covers all the IDB borrower member countries in Amazonian territories. Mm-hmm. So of course, Guyana, Suriname, Colombia, Ecuador, Bolivia, Brazil, Venezuela, the whole 8 countries, member countries of the IDB Group in the Amazon region. Okay,
that's great. Can you give us some examples of the type of projects that you're already working on? I know you have a very committed team at the unit. So give us a little bit of what's coming up.
Yeah, a very exciting example is a project that we're currently working on with IDB Lab and the Organization for the Indigenous Peoples of the Colombian Amazon, OPIAC, which is also one of the largest indigenous organizations of Colombia, for the development of a prototype or a minimum viable product, as it's called in the startup jargon, for the creation of a first indigenous-led fund capitalized by the sale of non-fungible tokens, NFTs, whose initial value is going to be based on the valuation of the natural capital of 1 hectare of Amazonian forest present in the indigenous reserves. And the idea here is through marketing campaigns to bring the general public to be able to buy indie tokens, as they're going to be called, linked to the improvement of living conditions of indigenous communities and the conservation or restoration of the Amazon biome ecosystems. And the idea is that the purchase of these tokens offers the public the possibility of making traceable financial contributions to projects developed by the community themselves. And in the context of this project, we're providing financing support to do the preparatory contextual analysis work, to support the issuance of the tokens at the MVP level, and to help design the indie fund itself so that it follows corporate governance practice and international best practice. And something very exciting that I think about this example is that it brings together digitalization, conservation, and economic empowerment of the indigenous communities from projects that are led and have been brought directly by the communities to the IDB.
That sounds super cool. Like I would never think about, the Amazon and think about crypto or digital currencies and NFTs. So this is amazing. But tell us, how are you going to calculate the value of an hectare? It sounds like kind of difficult. I don't know how are you going to address that.
It is very difficult, and the logic of the technology is that basically you're going to have for each token, it's almost like a folder with layers of information that you're going to be able to aggregate, including information about natural capital and biodiversity, about forest coverage, about carbon sink, but also eventually include aspects related to community development. So there might be areas that are very important for the livelihoods of communities in the Amazon region. So there's a value there. So the idea is to bring the technology to be able to group all this information together and to provide a value through those tokens that then can be used for any people in the world that wants to help protect the forest, to finance and to trace what is happening with the specific information that is provided in that token.
And this is very important because although the Amazon is located in South America, we know that it has 10% of our, the world's biodiversity. So we all have a role to play in this. And it's great to see how the initiative how we can really protect the Amazon while improving the livelihoods of the local community. So really, it's great work, Daniel, that you and your team is putting on. So keep on doing it. So now I'm gonna move to Ellen. Ellen, IDB recognizes the critical role the private sector plays in climate action. So tell us more about how IDB Invest is working with our private sector partners to advance this agenda.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you for having IDB Invest in this conversation. As you know, we want to be the partner of choice for the private sector in the region. We know they play a critical role to raise ambition on climate action for the region. We cannot just base all our actions on the governments. We also have to include the private sector. And I think the last COP, in COP26 in Glasgow, was a clear indication that the private sector is very committed. There were many pledges by the private sector actors, financial sector and non-financial sector, or from the real economy, trying to reduce emissions, have a target on net zero emissions by 2030 or 2050. The race to zero is something that we saw that is basically many companies around the world trying to commit to reduce emissions by 2030 by 50% and to be net zero by 2050. And we are part of that conversation. We at IDB Invest try to engage the private sector in the region by committing and supporting them in this pathway towards net zero, but also to increase resiliency. Do not forget about resiliency in the region. It's a critical area. We're one of the most vulnerable regions in the world, and we have to act on that area. So in IDB Invest, we have different strategies. We have a corporate strategy. We want to issue bonds and fund ourselves with climate-related funding, as we did by issuing the first blue bond of Latin America across, the times of COP26, and we continue to do more. We just did a sustainable bond as well. So our funding, we work with Treasury to support them in funding ourselves with thematic bonds or sustainable bonds linked to climate. On the investment side, I think we have a clear three-leg strategy. One, we support the sustainable finance sector to increase their ambition to move towards net zero. And one of the latest examples was our work with Produbanco in Ecuador in their trajectory to increase and to have a specific net zero target. But we also work on mobilizing more capital towards sustainable investment. And in that way, we can mobilize more actors and try to tap into the $50 trillion that they estimate is going to be available in ESG investing by 2025. And finally,
52 trillion, you said, $52 trillion.
52 trillion for ESG investing, exactly, by 2025. And the issue is how we tap and how do we make projects that are bankable and attractive to those resources. And that's where we're working on that. And finally, we do not forget, as I mentioned before, on resiliency. And we work with our clients to increase their adaptation and resiliency to the impacts of climate change. Those are like the three strategies within one on the climate agenda. And this all goes in line with our Vision 2025 that basically is promoting sustainable recovery in the region. And so we tap into, okay, in this context of recovering after COVID-19, we want to ensure that we recover in a net zero and resilient pathway.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing all the great work that the IDB Invest is doing and how it's really leveraged the impact of our private sector partners. But can you give us some examples of the type of work or projects that we're doing in different countries? Can you give us a couple of examples so that the audience can learn more about what you do?
I think there are two examples that many have maybe probably heard this before, but there's one that we worked with our blended finance team and also the infrastructure team at the operations part, where we supported an energy company in Chile to decarbonize their pathway to and support them in the project to net zero. And that way, what we did specifically in that case was monetize the emissions avoided by closing a thermal power plant, a coal thermal power plant, before the schedule agreement with the government. And by monetizing those emissions that were avoided and providing that as an incentive, we increased ambition and supported the company in their trajectory to net zero. Another example that it's also linked to resiliency is working with an anchor company in Mexico, in the southern part of Mexico, because what they saw, the anchor company saw that the producers of honey were losing productivity based on the impacts of climate change. The bees' productions of honey is very vulnerable to climate change. And so a lot of bees were dying based on the hurricanes or even the tropical storms that they were suffering in Yucatan. And so what we did is work with the anchor company to support their supply chain of honey by giving them queen bees and teach the indigenous communities to do the production of honey in a more resilient way. And that way we're supporting communities in Mexico, but also the anchor company to be able to produce a resilient honey product that they can also export to the rest of the world.
That's super interesting. When I think about value chains, I would have never thought about bees, but now I'm gonna think about bees. So this is super, super cool. And you also help this company in Chile to close down a thermal plant, right? Mm-hmm. So that's also a great example. So thank you. There is no doubt, Helen, that IDB Invest is really making a difference in mitigation, adaptation, and resilience through the financing, but also through these advisory services. So that's great to hear. And I know that many private sector people are listening to us, and they were gonna call right after this LinkedIn.
Please do.
So hopefully we get that, right? So far we have heard about the impact of our work externally, but what we do internally is equally important, since the IDB must lead by example, right? So as they say, we must walk the walk, or we must walk the talk. I always get confused with how you say it, but either or. But anyways, so we have Brett. Welcome, Brett. You've been with the IDB for so many years, and you have seen firsthand how IDB Group has prioritized the reduction of our environmental footprint, especially our carbon footprint, both in headquarters here in Washington and in our 28 country offices. So can you tell us more about how IDB is contributing to the planet and to our region through its internal efforts?
Absolutely, Angela, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity to represent the corporate side of the sustainability story here. The IDB Group has a long history of addressing the corporate aspects of sustainability. In 2006, we were the first multilateral development bank to commit to carbon neutrality, and we actually became carbon neutral in 2007. So that was a very quick uptake of that commitment. Since then, we have been focused on identifying those opportunities, both at headquarters and in the country offices, to further reduce our carbon footprint and improve the way in which we reflect the IDB Group's institutional commitment to sustainability. In your introduction, you mentioned the word integration. And I think lately, over the past few years, our corporate sustainability activities have shifted. They have not let go of the initial focus on on those opportunities for reducing our carbon footprint, but we've also understood and recognized the opportunities, but also the demand for us to become more integrated with the non-corporate side, to align with how our operations, our operational requirements, and as you said, to be able to demonstrate that we're walking the talk. So that's resulted recently in a shift in our focus to make sure that our corporate operations, that the way in which we design and build our facilities, our policies, the way in which we collect and record data are aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. I think that's reflected very well in how our ESG score has improved each year since 2020. Mm-hmm. This is a score that's very important to represent and reflect our corporate mandates, but also the corporate commitments and the corporate spirit of how we see sustainability in the larger context of our institution. So this is where what we do corporately impacts what Eileen, what Daniel, what the rest of the group is doing beyond our corporate walls. Some of our successes, we rank very highly among all organizations that utilize the Sustainalytics rating system. We're 9th out of over 1,000 banks and 9th out of over 100 development banks. So some details on what we've done and what we're doing. Now, this gets a little tedious and a lot of this is intuitive, but it's important because this is what creates our data. This is what feeds into these ratings. This is what allows us to demonstrate that we are doing what we ask of others and that we're seeking opportunities for improvement. In 2019, on the corporate side, the bank agreed on a target for reducing our fleet and facilities emissions, and that is a reduction of 14% by 2023. This is included in the corporate results framework, which is publicly available, and this is really also what indicates to our external stakeholders what commitments we're making, what we're committing to do, and they can hold us accountable to these types of activities. These are measurable. We're not only talking about it, we're also measuring it and then demonstrating that we have, or in some cases, we might not be able to meet that, but we have we're going to meet this requirement. Now, I've been at the bank, as you mentioned, a very long time. This is a very different bank than the one I came into. So over the past 20 years, we have been doing, and I'm going to focus a little on facilities because those were the easier to get started. Those were the ones that were under our control and that we had the ability to impact fairly efficiently. So, in this world, LEED certification is one of the easiest ways to demonstrate that we are, at least from our facilities universe, that we are paying attention to this. Our headquarters office building has been LEED certified since 2012, and now it's been LEED Platinum certified, and that is an incredible achievement for building the size and age of our headquarter building in Washington, D.C. We have 6 country offices with LEED certification. We're pleased that the country office in the Dominican Republic is LEED Platinum certified, and it's the first facility in that country to be LEED Platinum certified. And then we have 2 new country offices that are in the process of being LEED certified. That's not the stopping point. And LEED, for those who might not be familiar, LEED is for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's really the standard internationally for how buildings are designed, how they're built, and how they're operated. There's also a social and well-being component to those, which contribute to the overall scores. As part of our proactive and responsible administration of our facilities and what we do, we have over the years taken the opportunity to leverage what would be considered our routine operations and maintenance projects into projects that contain a very robust sustainability focus. We're spending public money here, so we need to make sure that we are smart, efficient, and effective in how we spend that money. And if a piece of equipment is reaching the end of its lifespan, that is the opportunity to make sure not only do we replace the equipment, but we do it responsibly and with a focus of sustainability. A good example of this is back in 2010, we started at headquarters what is called the Facilities Improvement Project. That was a project, at that time, our building was over 30 years old. It was time to replace components. But also at that time, we saw the need to make sure that we were doing as much as we could to address the sustainability components. That this project had a huge sustainability component. So we replaced base building equipment, we replaced the building management systems, and through that project, we were able to accomplish savings of over $300,000 a year starting in 2014. That type of approach has multiple advantages. One, we're saving money.
Mhm.
Two, if we are saving money, that means we are purchasing, in this case, less energy, less electricity.
Mhm.
And if we're purchasing less electricity, we're reducing our footprint. So we continue to realize the savings and the reductions. We haven't stopped with our efforts to reduce energy. For instance, we're in the process now of making sure that all light fixtures at headquarters have LED lighting fixtures and bulbs. We're using occupancy sensors. When we purchase equipment and appliances, we purchase Energy Star. So again, these seem intuitive, and they have become intuitive for our program, but I just wanted to highlight those because they do contribute to our data, our scores, and are the right thing to do. Now, in the country offices, we have a comprehensive sustainable energy capital project, which includes similar activities, but for our country offices. The upgrades of our heating and cooling systems, thermal insulation on some country offices, occupancy sensors. A big component of this is the installation of solar panels.
Mhm.
We have completed a group of solar panel installations at 5 country offices, and the average electricity production is 44% per office. Now, it's not
The
equivalent.
The saving is 40%.
That is our solar panel project on average. If you aggregate the 5 country offices, is producing 44% of the energy needed for those country
Wow.
offices, which is not insignificant.
No, it's
We
great.
also have 8 additional country offices that are in the pipeline for this, and we expect to have those completed. We had planned on 2023, but with the supply chain issues and all, that might stretch into 2024, but those are underway. We have a sustainable fleet capital project where we are replacing our automobiles,
Mhm.
our fleet in the country office with more sustainable options. The headquarters, we have a zero waste program that started in 2019. We now are consistently recycling and composting at least 85% of our waste. We have training programs for staff. You know, the corporate sustainability program aren't the people throwing everything away. This needs the understanding and
It's a
participation
cultural change. It's a
of
cultural
everyone.
change.
Exactly.
It's a
Exactly. And
cultural-
that's an important part of what we do. It depends on the behaviors
Yes.
of others. And we do have a robust outreach program, green ambassadors, both at headquarters and country offices,
Mhm.
that help us with this. All of this from a facility standpoint is kind of tidied up very nicely in the new IDB Group corporate real estate approach. And that really sets the framework for how we are going to approach our facility design, performance, operations, and maintenance for the future. It's institution-wide, so it's applicable to headquarters and country offices. And of the 6 guiding principles, sustainability is one of them. So it's really been institutionalized and formalized as a primary component of our corporate real estate approach. Travel has been a little more challenging.
Mhm.
Like facilities, travel has the component of being a service that is business driven to a great extent.
Yeah.
What we have learned over the aspect of the pandemic, where we went to a fully remote work modality for some period of time and travel was suspended, those were opportunities to look at both of our demand-driven services, if you will, whether it be space or travel, to make sure that we do not let go of those aspects that we learned during the pandemic. But I do think that there is a recognition that what was happening in the past 2 years is not necessarily the right thing to happen in the future. What we now are getting into, again, I'm talking about travel, but relating it to space as well, is how we have conversations about determining what the right level of space, what the right level of travel is.
Yeah.
However,
What is the balance? What is that?
what's the balance? It is
What's the
needs
balance?
driven.
Yeah.
It's needs driven. It does not mean that what we used to accomplish in the office or what we used to accomplish face-to-face via travel cannot be accomplished remotely. But what we are recognizing is everything can't be done that way, and we need to find what the balance is. Now, in anticipation of that, our travel regulations have been tracked and revised over time to really align with the travel industry's best practices. We book direct flights, so we're more direct. We have economy class travel for all flights under 9 hours. That's a more sustainable way of travel. And we have air and hotel suppliers, and we have a solid sustainability initiative program that we pay attention to that. That's actually part of the RFP process. When every year we go out with an RFP for our hotels and our travel contracts, we ask for them to fill out a questionnaire related to their sustainability programs. So we do have a challenge with travel. The nice thing is too, on the airline side, that's on their radar as well. That is starting now to become a competitive edge for the airlines. We do not directly affect how the airlines do their business, but we certainly can provide input, and the way in which we interact with them certainly articulates our approach and our expectations of that industry. We still have a CO2 footprint. We still have a carbon footprint. Yeah. We offset that. We neutralize that through the purchase of our green investments. We purchase and make investments to offset our footprint, and we're smart about that. We make sure that we go to countries and we analyze the projects to which we can contribute to offset. In the past, we have agroforestry projects, we've had wind, solar, energy efficient cook stoves. So not only are we keeping the IDB Group carbon neutral, we're contributing to projects that might not have been able to find a source of financing for that type of activity. And we understand the importance of this data. So our corporate sustainability information can be found in the annual sustainability report, which is published on the bank's website. There's a global reporting initiative annex that gets into more details. That's part of that report. And then we do have a corporate sustainability website. So in short, or not so short, just some details about what we're doing and what we're planning on doing moving forward.
Oh, thank you, Brett. Very interesting, all the work. I mean, you cover everything, all the aspects. I learned a lot about what we're doing actually. And as an IDB employee, I have to say, I feel very proud to hear all this advancement, recognition, and I look forward to more, like you do, I guess.
We do have a lot planned, and our next steps are going to be further aligning, providing the type of data, the type of reporting, making sure we're doing the right things that supports the institution, particularly as this becomes more international. And again, I like your word of integration, that the corporate and operation side of things are becoming much more integrated.
So thank you so much for that. So we have come a long way, but we have to agree that we can do more on all fronts, internally, externally, and personally. So because I do think that we have an enormous opportunity to rethink how we can take action on climate and ensure a nature positive recovery. This is a joint effort and everyone has to play a role. So before we wrap up, I want to take some of the questions from the audience. So let's see how is the chat. Let's see if we have already got one. So we have one for Daniel. Daniel, can you, I'm going to read from the chat right here. Can you tell us more about the role of regional cooperation?
Yeah, absolutely. Regional cooperation plays a very important role in the context of the Amazon initiative, as it entails a region that covers more than 8 countries. So we're going to be working at a regional level through several ways. Number one is by partnering with the institutions that have been created to address some of the issues related to the Amazon region. And we're working very closely with the Amazon Treaty Cooperation Organization, ATCO, which is the political entity that was created to facilitate political dialogue within countries. So we're working very closely with them, setting up an agenda for cooperation. Second, we're going to be working in developing knowledge and building up knowledge from different experiences that can be applied in different contexts. So it's something that we think we can certainly contribute. A third aspect is by partnering as well with through the private sector to learn and to incentivize entrepreneurship all across the biome from a regional perspective, and learning from those experiences and seeking how can we move some of those experiences and replicate some of those experiences in other countries. And then finally, working a lot with organizations like COICA, which is the coordinator or indigenous organizations of the Amazon region, just to make sure that we also fine tune with what's happening in respect to at the regional level with some of the key stakeholders. So engaging with the key actors, building knowledge, and also mobilizing the private sector.
Thank you, Daniel. Now we have a question for Ellen. Ellen, what are the basic requirements for a new climate resilience startup that is seeking financial support from IDB Invest? Financial or non-financial support?
Thank you for the question. I think it's important to know that when we talk about startups, there are many startups that actually start with support from IDB Lab, our innovation lab and the IDB Group. And once they have reached a level of maturity that they can access a more financing or an equity investment from our side, IDB Lab passed those startups to us, to IDB Invest. And that's where we analyze the transaction, similar to any other transaction that has to comply with certain integrity and environmental, social requirements to access financing. But the entry point probably would be, at least at the initial part, with IDB Lab.
Okay, that's great. So we should put like a link to the IDB Lab website so they can start getting the information, right? Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this one for you, Brett. What are the next steps for the corporate sustainability program?
Yeah, we have, before I continue, I've been at the bank so long, I've forgotten my words. I want to go back to my answer about, we purchased carbon offsets. That was the word I was looking for. Carbon offsets that allow us to be carbon neutral. And that's the carbon offsets are what fund the projects that we execute in our country. So now to what's next. You know, interestingly, we have, I think, integrated our approach to sustainability in our corporate operations to the point where it's now become second nature. It's part of what we do. What's starting to evolve is how we kind of started this is the ESG focus and the result of the Paris Agreement and ESG, environmental, social, and governance. What was initially, when we started, was more causal. We were addressing what caused climate change through lowering our carbon footprint, things like that. We have not let that go, but we've had to expand our approach. We're in the process of expanding our approach to include the effect of this, and that is environmental risk, environmental safeguards. What do we do, particularly on the corporate side, because we are spending public funds? What do we do to ensure that we are addressing and we're not putting assets and or people at risk from environmental impact? So our corporate sustainability program had a charter, and we're going to be having discussions now on how do we address the environmental risk and safeguard component of that. We have great partners in the bank, particularly CSD, risk management, the ESG department. So we have great resources, and that'll be something we focus on this year, because one now cannot move forward without the other.
Exactly. I think this event is a good, showcase of this integration of the different areas of the bank. So, so I think we're getting close to wrapping up this event. Before that, I would like to invite everyone to attend IDB Invest upcoming Sustainability Week 2022, which is going to take place at the end of June. I think our teams are going to share the link here so you can register. And we're going to be sharing different publication and reports that the bank is going to be putting out in the coming weeks. But I think as a final message, I think I would like to highlight that the IDB Group is really committed to building a greener and more resilient future, but at the same time, bringing economic prosperity to all. We do want to encourage sustainable choices and behaviors, as we were saying earlier, at work, at home, to really preserve our planet and our families. We do believe that a green future is a future of opportunities. So I just want to close the event by thanking again, Brad, Daniel, Ellen, for your insight, for the amazing work that you're doing, for your commitment, and all the team behind this initiative. And thanks for our audience for your participation and your interest in the work that we do. And we look forward to seeing you soon, and have a great week. Have a great green week.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.